Welcome to Voice, Video, and ServiceNow, how to deliver true omnichannel customer service with 3C Logic and ScreenMeet. I'm Tucker Delaney-Wynn, a member of the sales and marketing team at 3C Logic, and I'll be moderating today's webinar. And if you have any questions during this webinar, please ask those in the Q&A section. We'll answer those towards the end. And today's webinar will also include a demonstration of 3C Logic and ScreenMeet's integration with ServiceNow, so be sure to stay tuned for that. And let's start out by just meeting our guests and diving right in. So joining me are Guillaume Senard, VP of Marketing and Alliances at 3C Logic. 3C Logic, of course, is the premier voice-enabling solution that natively integrates with ServiceNow. As a certified ServiceNow Premier Partner, 3C Logic Cloud Contact Center solution is the only platform that complements ServiceNow's existing digital workflows like email and chat to create an omnichannel experience. And then we also have Steve Smith, Senior Director of Solutions at ScreenMeet. And we're ScreenMeet with easy, secure, and integrated voice and video chat, co-browse, and remote desktop takeover. ScreenMeet enhances ServiceNow across ITSM, customer, and employee workflows. And with ServiceNow and ScreenMeet, customers can optimize IT service operations, improve customer and employee experiences and productivity, and maximize returns on their technology investments. So a brief overview of 3C Logic and ScreenMeet. You'll get to see both in action today, which we're very excited about. Thank you both, Guillaume and Steve, for joining us. We're excited to dive in. So we're going to start with just a little bit on the state of the customer service industry to get going here. And we've got a couple facts to ground us as we discuss. So I want to start with the first one, that 65% of companies currently place more importance on the customer experience than they did prior to the COVID-19 pandemic. Not a big surprise here, but I think we all know and have that sense that the customer experience is even more important now than it has been in the past. But not only that, inquiries are coming and they're increasing both in quantity, but also in complexity. So here we have 55% of contact centers saw an increase in customer interactions in the past year, along with that increase in contact complexity. So those more nuanced, specific requests. And I'll add that this increase in interactions is happening across all channels, voice, video, and digital. So really seeing that increase in complexity. So I think it's only natural as we move to our final stat that 73% of organizations say that interactions frequently, if not always, escalate to a live agent. So I think as we see this trend here, this increase not only in interactions, but in complexity, it's clear that the contact center is not going anywhere and that customers are craving one-on-one interactions, especially when trying to solve these complex, nuanced problems that are increasingly happening. Digital channels alone really aren't enough. Organizations need a complementary way to address these complex challenges. And that's exactly, of course, what we're here to discuss with Guillaume and Steve. So with that, let's get into the value of voice and video for the customer experience. Guillaume, I'll start with you for a look into voice.
Thanks, Tucker, and thanks to all of you that are joining us today. Pleasure to have you. So yeah, I think you set the baseline pretty accurately there, Tucker, in that at the end of the day, organizations and the customers that they serve, to your point, could be employees, could be external customers, really still require a diversified set of channels for them to be able to interact with your organization. And obviously, there's a huge emphasis on leveraging digital channels, digital transformation, self-service, knowledge portals, all things that ServiceNow, which we're going to focus on today, does very, very well. To try and, of course, deflect some of those more common inquiries that are likely to come to those organizations, something as simple as a password reset request and so on and so forth. But what myself and Steve are going to talk about today is the fact that at the end of the day, there's still an abundance of use cases and there's still a heavy reliance on, in our case, voice, but Steve will talk to video, where you look at 81% of consumers today still use phone-based customer support. And so it's old, but tested, if you will, as a channel. And as traditional as it might appear, there's a lot of evolution that's happening within the voice industry to make it more modern and more complementary to digital channels. When you look at some of the data, a large majority of organizations will tell you that less than 20% of the inquiries that they typically field today can actually be addressed across self-service mediums, alone. And while we expect an increase in the number of things that self-service and digital channels can service, in fact, in a couple of years, about a third of organizations think that most of their inquiries can be self-service, that still leaves a large majority that are likely to look to self-service, but also voice and video, which we'll cover today, to help round out those use cases. And typically there's a correlation between the complexity of an inquiry and, if it's complex, the likelihood that they're going to want to speak to an individual and those types of circumstances. And so that's why 87% of organizations will openly tell you that despite the emergence of digital channels and automation, they still view voice and video as important complements that they leverage and need to leverage in the overall customer service value chain. Again, that service could be to employees, could be to customers, or anything in between. But I'll leave it to Steve to speak to some of the highlights of where video fits in the equation.
Yeah, thanks a lot, G. And I think, certainly what the last 18 months has told us and really shown is that the adoption of video has increased. People are more willing to share a video, turn on a webcam. And I think when you hear the word video, the thing that you might immediately think of is that really means sharing a webcam. And whilst that's true, there are other use cases as well. But if we start off on that webcam experience, when you think about using voice, you're building that relationship, you have that verbal dialogue. You're able to show empathy, your agents, with their customers. It can help them resolve issues faster. But then if you throw video into the mix, and specifically a webcam, again, they're putting a face to a name. And again, you're sort of elevating that experience for them, helping them to build the relationship. But aside from a webcam, there's a lot more to video. So if you think about video as being able to view an end user's desktop or a particular application to help them troubleshoot, or even see a physical device that they may have, something maybe you've sent them to configure or something they have a problem with. Mm-hmm. And by leveraging the camera on a mobile device that they have, you can see as an agent the issue that they have. So when you throw all those things into the mixer, you're basically helping people a lot easier. You're increasing your first call resolution. You're shortening those call times because you have sort of eyes on the problem. And all of this improves agent efficiency. And obviously, one of the most important things is improving those customer satisfaction scores and ratings.
So I think, Steve, you and I, we put together an example, a simple use case to really sort of highlight the solution in action. And I think one of the biggest things that hopefully the audience will be able to see for themselves is, how you can actually seamlessly provide and transition between channels while making sure that the agent has the benefit of understanding what it is that they're trying to solve for, leveraging, of course, ServiceNow, Agent Workspace, and the like for that use case, right? So let me switch gears here and let me confirm that hopefully you and the audience can see my ServiceNow screen. And let me set some context. So number one, this is obviously ServiceNow Agent Workspace. For the sake of convenience, I've sort of kept it nice and blank. But imagine that I'm going to play the role of agent, and we've got the benefit of here Steve role playing the the role of a customer who's going to call in, presumably because they have an issue that they couldn't resolve through traditional self-service means. To set some context here a little bit, at least from the purview of 3C Logic, since this engagement will first occur over the voice channel, within ServiceNow, we have already built a call flow. This is an example of the 3C Logic IVR that allows you to, using a drag and drop experience, collect information from the caller and, walk them through an experience that ultimately, leveraging information that's known about the caller, information that's stored in ServiceNow, ultimately marry them with the agent that's going to be qualified to address their needs. So I will be the agent that by default is going to receive Steve's call, but we already know who Steve is using his phone number. So you're going to see certain steps in the experience before he reaches me as a consumer, where we're personalizing the engagement, right? And showing that, hey, we care enough to know you by name, right? And then from the agent perspective, what you have is the ability to embed not just the digital channels that ServiceNow solves for, but of course, the ability to receive a call. And then once we receive that call, we'll show you how we can very easily transition to a video use case, because in this case, it's going to be a lot faster if Steve is able to sort of show me what it is that is his problem, rather than try and go through the extra length and time of having to describe that issue, right? Steve, anything to add before we get started?
Yeah, I think, could you show an incident that you have? I just want to show, so when you think about the context before we go in, you have our integration fits in the contextual panel there over on the right-hand side.
Yep.
And so, when the call comes in, you'll see how the agent has the option to start whichever ScreenMeet session is relevant to that call. The one we're going to do today is a live call. This is predominantly video, and we're going to look at something physical. But of course, there's remote support as well, which is a true device takeover if you need to do that, and also a co-browse solution for supporting sort of that retail experience more, or finance more often than not.
All right, so I'm just gonna go to the home screen here, Steve. Let's pretend I'm an agent. As you can see, I'm available. So go ahead and call in.
I'm going to call in and
walk our audience through the use case.
Yeah, so I'm going to now dial in and put my phone on speaker, and you'll hear the interaction.
Hello, Steve. Thank you for calling ABC Corp. You have reached the employee support line. We noticed you have an open ticket with a description. Router not properly distributing Wi-Fi. Is this what you are calling about?
Yes.
Got it. Please hold as we transfer you to a network support specialist.
So I'm going to put this on hold here. So let's walk through it, right? So first things first, the individual, in this case, Steve, as a customer, called in. The system quickly identified who Steve was, actually went through the step of walking them by, or identifying them by name. Hi, Steve. And then noticed that there's already an active ticket that has been opened on his behalf, and went ahead and assumed and qualified and confirmed whether or not that's what Steve is calling about. So right now, what we did is we populated an interaction. You notice that we've got a little bit of information, contextual information, that it's Steve, the number he's calling from. But more importantly, if we open up the ticket that's already associated with Steve, it read out loud, hey, is this what you're calling about? Router not properly distributing the Wi-Fi. So as an agent, I already have all the contextual information. The system already validated this is what the caller is calling about, went ahead and gave me the relevant ServiceNow information and ticket, and this is where I'm going to operate from. Now, I could very well say, Steve, thank you. I see you're having a router issue. I noticed that you most likely, have you tried our knowledge base? Yes, I have. Okay. I'll tell you what, Steve, as much as you could describe what your router issue is, which, is feasible and certainly possible over the phone, in the interest of time and just to get to the bottom of it, what I'd like to do, Steve, is, with your permission, I would like to initiate a video connection as well. Are you open to that?
I'm open to that. Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
All right. So I'll tell you what, Steve, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and start a video session. I'm going to record that session with your permission, Steve, just so that we can use this for training purposes in the future. Does that work for you?
It does, yeah.
All right. So I'm going to go ahead and create that session. What I'm going to do while that session gets created here, Steve, is I'm going to send you an SMS with a link to that recording. You should have it here shortly. So to our audience, one of the things that 3C Logic enables, and again, to the agent, to his customer, this is one seamless experience across channels, is for the convenience, for Steve's convenience, although I could give him a way to log in. Alternatively, I'm going to send Steve a quick SMS. So I've already got Steve's phone number here. I'm just going to paste the link, and Steve, you should have that popping up here in just a second. Let me know when you receive that text.
I have
While you do that, Steve,
text.
I'm going to go ahead and open up the video session. And when you get a chance, go ahead and join me.
For the audience, when I click on that link, I'm not taken to an app store or Play Store to download an app. This is purely browser-based, regardless of the device that you are joining from. Okay, so it's really convenient for the customer. And so I'm going to turn on my front-facing webcam initially, and there we are again. So hi G, so let me show you the router, or the router I should say, and you can help me troubleshoot that. It's really flashy wireless.
And I'm just going to pop open this into a full screen just so I can see what you're doing here, Steve.
All righty. Okie dokie.
I see your problem. You've crossed your wires here, Steve. The yellow one needs to be in the hole to the left of the blue one. So what I can do here, of course, and this is one of the benefits to the agent, is I can go ahead and annotate that just in case there's any confusion as to what I'm starting. Steve, this is where the yellow one should go, as opposed to where it is right now. And that should fix your problem.
Okay, perfect. That's great. So cross wires. All right. Thanks very much.
All right, Steve.
I'll try that.
So I'm
and
just
get
gonna
back.
close out our video session, right? So let me
Yep.
just close that out. Steve, while I have you, is there anything I can help you with?
No, that's been fantastic. Thanks a lot.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and end our video session. I'm also going to end our call. Steve, if you need any help, you know where to find us. So notice here, in this case, Tucker, and to our audience, one of the nice things is that while the individual most likely tried to self-service, they did call in. We will streamline how quickly they reached the most relevant qualified individual. And it just so happened to be a use case, a field case where, thanks to ScreenMeet, we can combine the benefit of routing to an agent that is also enabled with video capabilities to just say, look, it will probably take 10 minutes for me to understand where the yellow, line was plugged in as opposed to where it is, but in seeing it in less than 30 seconds, I was able to give Steve the appropriate, instructions. What's nice as well, though, is once the call has ended, of course, I could be available to receive the next call as an agent. That's possible. But from an administrative standpoint, a couple of things to note that for this interaction, there's automatically going to be a record of the call. We could also send out an SMS that asks the individual on a scale of 1 to 10, Steve, could you rate your experience with said agent? You also have a link to the call recording if you wanted to, for quality purposes, measure the engagement between myself and Steve. And ScreenMeet provides the same, and I'll let you speak to this, Steve, but the same capabilities as well, but with the video recording also added to the incident.
Yeah, so again, with that, obviously all the session data is back in the incident record. And actually, we recorded that session, so there'll be a video playback, so that could be shared amongst other team members, or it could just be there for audit trail purposes. And actually, there's further information that's available that shows you what we did in that session. The fact that, I shared a camera, I shared my reverse camera, and that G used an annotation tool as well. So some real detailed session data goes back into the incident for both the voice and the video.
So the benefit here at the end of the day to our audience and Tucker is, again, we're not advocating that one channel supersedes all other modes of communication, but rather it's how well and how effectively can you mix the two, right, to drive real value, right? So if we talk about, what is 3C Logic and ScreenMeet for ServiceNow, right, and the value for that, I think, Steve, you had a few things that you wanted to share in that regard.
Yeah, I did. And I think, hopefully in that demo, we were able to sort of, I know it was very short, but get the sort of message across that, how both 3C Logic and ScreenMeet complement existing workflows within ServiceNow. I think, we pride ourselves on having a seamless experience and integration. There are other solutions, and the word integration can be, overly used and often is. And really all those things do is take you out of the ServiceNow or the platform, and you run in their application. And that leads to disjointed experience for the agent. And not only that, we also showed how the session data was captured back on the incident. And so everything is really in there. So if you think about that sort of true seamless end-to-end experience, you start from the beginning, sort of everything remains in ServiceNow. And what I mean by that is this is from managing users. So actually, who in your ServiceNow instance has access to these products? So that's step one, all managed within the platform. And then to actually engaging with the customer and starting a session. Again, you saw that experience in that demo, all within the platform. And then finally, as we've said, is capturing that session data and actually having that related to the incident or the case or wherever the session was started from. And by doing these, you're making your interactions more efficient. It's a great experience for the agent. It's a great experience for the customer, and you can resolve issues faster. And then also, again, with that data, you have stronger visibility into your case history, case statistics, agent performance. And it's just a real sort of, as I said, seamless end-to-end experience. And we often present this solution to ServiceNow sales teams and solution consultants in their team meetings. We get invited to those. And I think there's no bigger compliment than some of the feedback we get when it's about how easy it is to install in the instance and how it actually looks like a feature of ServiceNow. Do you have anything to add to that, G?
What I find interesting is that, we, both from a call center perspective, right? So obviously 3C Logic, we specialize in providing voice, and you saw a very small use case of what we can do when it comes to SMS, right? But it's that engagement layer. But we also recognize that to the earlier data points that Tucker had shared, right? A lot of organizations are actually seeing an increased number of call volumes that are coming in. That doesn't mean that they've failed at their digital transformation strategy. It's just that there is still a desire for that human connection, which obviously events of the recent year and change that it's a little bit lacking as versus what we know. But at the same time, those sort of same organizations are being asked to do more with less. So wherever you can optimize how quickly you get transferred to a qualified agent, and then tools like ScreenMeet can help resolve issues faster, because at some point, sometimes seeing the issue is a lot faster than having to describe one. It's the combination of using all those interaction layers with natively what ServiceNow does as a platform, which is managing workflow. If you have access to who the individual is, what they might potentially be calling about, is there an open incident, and being able to then route in that accordance, from our perspective, it just makes your service desk that much more efficient. And of course, at the end of the day, anyone's going to ask, okay, well, then what are the benefits, right? I mean, at the end of the day, this all looks slick. What's the real-time ROI? And I think, Steve, you had some examples. I know I have some as well, but let's start with you.
Yeah, and I think, a lot of these we've touched on. It's all about that customer experience, that sort of reducing the support handling time, improving first contact resolution and customer satisfaction. The majority of our customers are large enterprise customers. And, as a testament, ServiceNow is actually a customer of ScreenMeet, and they use our product to support their internal employees. But you can see interesting stats on here. The first call resolution increased by around about 35%. Is very significant indeed. And then in the last month or two, we had a webinar where we had a guest speaker from Ontario Teachers Pension Plan. And you can see the quote there. So far, we've seen very positive, measurable financial results from the implementation of ScreenMeet and ServiceNow, with $275,000 in operational savings per year. So that's just in the first year that they've been using the solution. So, when you think about ROI, they've significantly made that back straight away. And, we got some interesting numbers in earlier this week from a customer of ours that just went into deployment. They had 4,000 global support sessions in a month. And by using ScreenMeet, it's enabled them to reduce the handling time of those sessions by an average of 15 minutes per session. And they've only been using it for a month. So again, it doesn't take, too much to work out the power of having, video integrated along with voice into ServiceNow.
And if I were to share similar stories with regards to 3C Logic, a lot of the organizations we deal with, while they're doing their digital transformation, most of those service desks could be an IT help desk, a customer service support group. Very often, the voice component is administered by independently, whether in-house or outsourced to a third party. So quite literally, when we as customers are calling in and you land on an agent and they ask you those qualified, who are you? Why are you calling? It's quite literally because they're picking up or answering a desk phone or the equivalent to that is not integrated or leveraging information with ServiceNow that would allow you to avoid some of those, mundane, time-consuming steps, right? And then only to find out that, oh, had I known, you would have been transferred to somebody else to begin with. So when we talk about value from the capacity of voice or SMS, you'll typically see a reduction in average agent wrap-up time. They can cycle through calls much, much faster. And in an example here with a huge healthcare provider, during the pandemic, they were relying heavily on contractors to make up the difference for the amount of call volume. People calling about where can I get tested, or do I have COVID, or anything and everything in between. And their help desk was completely overrun because they were swivel chairing between different platforms, and the amount of mundane administrative tasks that were expected of the agents were eating into the time they could be spent handling customers. When they deployed 3C Logic, they were actually able to get rid of the majority of their contractors. So in similar fashion, Steve, the system paid for itself on day one. They were actually able to field double the volume with basically, half the headcount. You can also look at it from an administrative standpoint, right? A lot of things that we at 3C Logic provide has a lot to do with quality assessment and assurance, right? With all your agents working from home, how can you monitor them from a distance and understand what is the quality of the engagements? And is there an opportunity or a need to perhaps train an agent or intervene on behalf of a customer who might have been frustrated on the recent interaction? So that type of AI, natural language understanding, speech analytics is something that we do as well. And it could cut down significantly the amount of time an organization spends, both in time and money, auditing the performance of their team. And that auditing is a lot harder today with everyone working from home than when it was when everyone was working in the same office. And so it's not just a case of doing CTI and ScreenPop. It's going much, much further than that. It's getting away from legacy systems. It's enabling the stakeholders who are solving for digital and self-service use cases, extending that out to voice and video as well. And then at the same time, making sure that to the agent, it's not yet another system that they have to learn, but to incorporate it in a way that is complementary to what they're already doing in ServiceNow. And then at the same time, making that customer experience that much more efficient. And so that's certainly where we add value, and where we certainly value our extended partnership with ScreenMeet, which is the fact that we are able to connect and, per the demo, show that end-to-end experience if someone were to call. And I know I've called in and I've not been privy to an experience similar to one that we've demonstrated. And yet it would have been that much more efficient, and I would have been that much happier. And you talk about value, that plays down to retention as well, right, Steve? Because everything now is basically a license. It's a subscription service. So you're only as good as your last experience. And typically people never call or reach out to an organization to give you a high five and tell you did a good job. They're calling because they need assistance. And the quality of that service is what they're going to judge you by in terms of, do you want to maintain this relationship with you, or was this experience poor enough to justify leaving for potentially a competitor, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So Tucker, I'll turn it back over to you. Hopefully there's been a few questions that myself or Steve are happy to address.
Yes, absolutely. We've got a couple of questions already, actually. So we are coming to a close, but we definitely want to take a few minutes to do that. I do want to both give you a high five because that was an awesome demo, just seeing that seamless experience, but how much rich data you're getting both before and after the call. So we'll dive right into the Q&A. And while we're doing that, we will leave our contact information up in case you do want to take advantage of voice and video for ServiceNow. Please do go ahead. We've left some email contact information. Please reach out there or visit ScreenMeet or 3C Logic's website. Would love to be in touch. But getting into the Q&A, we have a couple questions, actually. The first one came while the demo was happening, and I think a very fair and important one. Just asking, what is the complexity of implementing a solution like this? And maybe, Steve, I'll start with you.
Yeah, and I think, you think about the word integration or the word installation, and you think of development resources, what's required. It's really simple. I'll tell you from a ScreenMeet side, there are 2 steps. You install a package, you assign user roles, actually there's 3, and you add the ScreenMeet component to the contextual panel. But also from the 3C Logic side, when we first started getting together as partners, I was working with one of the solutions consultants at 3C Logic, and we were sort of, I'll show you yours, you show me mine. And they integrated ScreenMeet in their demo org, and I integrated 3C Logic in my demo org. And I can tell you how simple that was. I knew nothing about 3C Logic prior to that, and I was able to install it and get it up and running, in under 30 minutes. And that's the same approach. So it's, again, that comes back to how we pride ourselves in that in-platform experience. We try to make it easy, not just once you've got it, but to actually get it in and to get it out to your agents.
Yeah, I'll echo. I mean, if a salesperson can do it, I think it speaks highly of the product. So, I used ScreenMeet and it was seamless. With regards to 3C Logic, Ultimately the deployment or the length of the deployment is measured in a matter of weeks. There's training and there's setup, and depending on the customers, I mean, most of our customers are Global 2000. We have installations now on 5 continents. We've got some of the leading organizations within their respective industries, whether it's financial, healthcare, even in the public sector, universities, software manufacturing. There's examples across the board in IT, in employee and HR workflows, as well as customer service management. But one of the things that they love when it's all said and done is, ultimately we're giving them keys to something that for the longest time they were relying on another group to do for them. And the integration was always secondary, right? It's like, well, I use ServiceNow. Could you at least make the calls, appear or integrate with ServiceNow? And at best, it was a surface level integration rather than a native one, as you've seen between our solution and that of ScreenMeets. So, it's deceptively easy, but you can drive a lot of advanced use cases, and that's where we can do free workshops and so forth to figure out what are you using today and how might this be a better alternative.
Great, thank you, Guillaume. And I think you actually answered another question, kind of the same vein, just asking how much time and effort are required for the CTI integration, which you're speaking to. They, specifically are mentioning IVR testing and when it's ready to use. But another kind of question along those lines, in terms of the costing model, where would people find out more information about that, Guillaume?
Yeah, so it's a simple licensing model. So, I mean, there's different volume discounting and so forth. But we are at our core a software as a service. We share a very similar approach to our pricing model to that of ServiceNow. We are ServiceNow certified premier technology partner on the ServiceNow store. You can see some of the reviews there. But at its core, it's a licensing model. There is typically some setup, configuration, and training that is included. We include live customer support, account managers, project managers. It's a very high touch experience because ultimately we want to understand how you currently have ServiceNow deployed and how you view voice. And I'm sure Steve within ScreenMeet, it's the same thing, how you would see video be an extension of the way in which you've already architected your ServiceNow platform. So part of the process is understanding your workflows and then figuring out how we can perhaps enhance them, right? So if someone calls, knowing that it's Steve calling, can I save Steve the need to provide information that's already known, and at the same time use that information to provide an intelligent experience in terms of who I might route you to, and then at the same time enhance the agent as well. So there is a scoping session designed really to figure out how we can drive the most amount of value for you, but it's a simple licensing model at its core. Steve?
Yeah, same here. Licensing model. I think, one of the important things you already mentioned, retention, but is that adoption as well. So it's not a case of, great, you've purchased ScreenMeet. We want to work with you to make sure that ScreenMeet is successful in your organization. So we make sure that agents adopt, we have best practices, we have a success team that will work with you through the life cycle as a customer. Yeah, we really want you to use the product and partner with us as opposed to just be seen as a customer.
Great, thank you both. I think that's helpful to hear and get a little more insight into that part of the process too, because definitely something that's on people's minds. Just another question that I think comes up a lot that people will probably want to know. If these sessions are recorded, where is that data stored? So
it's the choice of the customer. So obviously, we're talking global customers, and there's that support different markets, represent different markets, and those markets have different requirements for where data is, how data is stored, data retention policies, all of those good things. And so really it's a choice. They can be stored actually in ServiceNow itself as a file local, but also in cloud. So think of Azure Blob Containers, AWS S3 buckets. You have options for where you store the data to make sure it can comply with your own internal data policies.
Yeah, we by and large have the same level of flexibility. One of the things that sets us apart is that we're really not interested in owning any data, especially anything that would be PII, personally identifiable information. If it resides in ServiceNow, we may make use of it depending on the use case to provide that intelligent experience, routing, and so forth. But when it comes to data storage, or data creation, the only data we create is call data. or including the call recording if you enable it. It's just a setting. Those can be stored in different locations in our cloud. We have installations on 5 continents. Or candidly, we've got a lot of customers that will choose to provision their own data center. It could be a virtual machine, and we'll simply leverage that, in which case even we don't have access to the data. So there's a couple different options, but one of the key things to really stress is at the end of the day, we view ServiceNow as the primary system of record, right? There's no need in duplicating information that already exists in our environment to solve for some of the use cases that we solve for. Instead, we'd rather enrich ServiceNow with information that's not native to the platform. So you saw how we store the call statistics, whether it's ourselves or ScreenMeet. There's more that we can store in there, including the call transcription, even the call speech analytics, the sentiment. What was the tone? Was it a positive or a neutral discussion as a whole? And all that stuff can be stored in ServiceNow. And by default, you can then drive ServiceNow workflows or actions from that information. But with regards to data storage, a lot of flexibility there.
Great. Thank you, Yam. And I think we're wrapping up here, but I might just ask one more final question as we round things out. I think something people might be wondering as well is, okay, can this be used in other examples directly on an interaction? I think, Yam, you touched on the different industries and some different use cases, but is there anything you'd want to add here in terms of different examples of where what we're seeing here might be used?
Yeah, so I'll speak for where we fit within the voice enablement aspect or SMS capabilities. We've got deployments in just about every type of industry you could expect. Specific to the ServiceNow ecosystem, we have implementations with IT service management. So serving, IT serving the organization, the employees. I can't log in to my computer, or I haven't received my computer, or even in employee workflows, whether it's managing employee complaints, in some cases anonymous complaints where they leave a voicemail, it creates an event or a case inside of ServiceNow, all the way through to actually how to improve the onboarding process of new employees, especially in industries, organizations that have high turnover by nature of the industry they're in. And then, of course, the most obvious one being in a B2C capacity. I'm a consumer. I try to solve my problem. In this case, today's example was my router. And of course, I went to the knowledge base and it asked the traditional, did you try and turn it on and turn it off? That didn't work. And I inevitably end up, having to call. So whether it's ITSM, employee workflows, or customer service management, we've got examples and deployments across the board and across industries.
Perfect. Great. Thank you so much. And I think someone had asked a similar question of, once this is implemented, can it be used on other modules, which I think is exactly what you're talking about, ITSM, CSM, HR. Steve, anything you want to add here?
No, I mean, it's honestly, it's like we have the same answers. It really is, and I think that just shows how they complement each other. But employee workflows is an interesting one because HR departments use it for onboarding. We have examples of that as well. Especially COVID obviously has escalated that with people. How many people have got a new job and have never met their colleagues or never been into the office, right? So it's important to add that value there. And of course, ITSM and CSM, that's bread and butter. But any, ScreenMeet will install in any task or interaction in ServiceNow. So anything that fits your flow. And of course, in multiple instances as well. It's not restricted to one. If you use all 3 of those workflows, the same installation is used in all 3 of those workflows.
Great. Well, we've got one final one, just someone asking about, aside from sending a link via SMS, what other options are there for customers to connect to a call? Maybe as kind of the voice representative here, anything you'd want to add to that?
Yeah, so I mean, the SMS is just a fun use case because everyone is literally attached to their phone. I'll let Steve share. I know for a fact that there's alternatives, with ScreenMeet, but I'll leave that to Steve to share. On the SMS note, typically SMS, what we've seen in the field, the most common use cases is using it as a notification tool, an alert tool, or someone calling in. And, you might put them on hold or say, hey, we'll call you back in 30 minutes. But by the way, let me send you an SMS with the knowledge base article. And that may be sufficient. And if it is, press 1 and we'll remove the call or the need to call you. Another example is using SMS for survey purposes. because typically you'll have a quicker and higher response rate than if you send an email survey. So just getting a pulse of the level of customer service or how people perceive your customer service. And then of course, there's the traditional having to call in where you're dialing a phone number. So there's a couple different options, but with regards to ScreenMeet, the SMS link is just one use case, but Steve, I know there's others, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're channel agnostic. So any channel that the customer engages with you on, we can sort of facilitate that. And it's not changing the way the installation works. You could actually verbally send somebody to a URL where they enter a PIN number and join the session. And again, no download, browser-based. Of course, as you saw, you can send a link. That was via SMS. If you've got some chat going on, you could do that. Even if you've got chat bots going on in your ServiceNow, then those sessions can be automatically created and communicated back through any digital channel that you have. So pretty much we'll support anything, any way you communicate with your customers inbound or outbound, there's a solution.
Yeah, and Steve, just to throw in an additional use case, you brought up the idea of chatbot. There are ways to eventually create a workflow. Say, okay, you know what? I'm a chatbot. Let me have someone call you, right? And I don't have to wait on hold. It creates an event in ServiceNow that to the agent gets presented as, hey, here's Tucker's file, call him. So I could simply do a simple click to call. So a little phone number icon next to your phone number. I'd have a time to digest the work item and the request, but then I'm calling you, Tucker. And, I would receive that based on how ServiceNow would distribute that ticket based on what was collected in the chatbot, for example. So it doesn't always have to be the chatbot was, it couldn't go the extra length. Here's a phone number you call. You could actually automate when or why a call gets initiated, and it can be a proactive event on behalf of the organization, rather than having you call in and wait on hold and potentially feel like you're repeating your life all over again.
Exactly. Yeah, no one wants that. Well, great. Well, thank you both. I think that should round out our Q&A today. We had some great questions here, really digging in. But yeah, I just want to thank you both again, Guillaume and Steve, for wonderful demo, really insightful information all around. I know I learned a lot, and I hope everyone else did. So thank you all so much for attending. Really appreciate your time. We hope you enjoyed it, and enjoy the rest of your day.